But I was like, am I really ready for this? Am I really ready to be the representation for so many people? And I am, because part of the reason why I did this was because I thought back to that 12-year-old girl and her feeling so ashamed and alone and ugly. And it was because I didn't see representation. I didn't see women who were bald and beautiful and accepting it.
Hi, friends, and welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. Now, I'm here to help you strategically navigate all of your career and life transitions. And as we like to say around here, a pivot and a plan B are not required. Now, before we dive into this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Just do me a solid, please. It really will help other people discover this transformative content. Also, do you know we have a newsletter? It is here. It's called Next Nuggets, where I share gems from the podcast and provide you with additional resources to get you from where you are to where you hope to be. Now just go to the Next Best Thing, ACT.com. Again, it's the name of the podcast, myinitials.com. The Next Best Thing, ACT.com. Scroll to the bottom and put in your email to sign up. Now, this week's episode is all about getting free from your past. Aziza Shuler is an anchor and reporter at CBS Philadelphia, but just a few weeks ago, she became the story. Take a listen.
I've spent most of my life trying to be perfect. And that's involved hiding two big secrets in my life. One is that I have alopecia. It's an autoimmune disease that's caused all of my hair to fall out. I wear a wig every day, personally and professionally. But I've come to realize this isn't me. And I want you all to know the real me and how it all started. For a long time, the other daunting secret in my life was my traumatic childhood. My mother gave birth to me when she was in a women's jail. Both my parents struggled with drug addiction for most of my childhood. And by the time I was 5 years old, my 6 siblings and I were forced into the foster care system.
Aziza took off her wig once and for all, and so much more that came with it. Now, don't be fooled. This conversation is not about hair. It's about our experiences, what we internalize, and how trauma can turn into triumph. Now, Aziza, she's just getting started. I'm so glad you're here. It's like such a pleasure to finally get to meet you.
Thank you. I know I'm excited to meet you as well. It's interesting because we'll have backgrounds in journalism, and being a reporter and being interviewed lately has been weird for me. I'm sure you know the feeling. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I know that I'm in good hands.
Yes, we take good care of our people over here. Yeah, you have such a great story. I didn't realize the depth of your story. So we've been following each other on Instagram, and then you had your post, and then I was like, oh wow, she's like beautiful. Face card never declines, and I was like, oh, she has alopecia. Okay, fine. And then it wasn't until I talked to my friend and he was like, oh no, you need to watch the story. And that's when he's like, you need to watch the story and you need to have her on your podcast.
Really?
Yeah. A friend of mine who's an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I dug deeper, and I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. You need to be here. Why did you think now? Why was now the time to tell your story?
It just felt right. I know we hear that a lot of times. You do things when the moment feels right. And that's genuinely what happened for me. I felt like I finally arrived to a point in my life when I was ready to just let it all out there. I guess just frankly speaking, I was tired of wearing wigs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever worn a wig before.
Yes.
It's exhausting. For me, I've been wearing a wig since I was 12 years old, or fake hair to some degree, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's weave or sew-in or a wig. But yeah, I just was sick of it. Waking up, having to deal with putting on the wig, hiding or making sure that it looked as perfect as possible, but also some of the health issues that came with it, which
Mm.
were they having allergic reactions to wig glue or some of the hair products and things like that. It became a burden more than something that felt like security.
Got it.
Um, and I was just like, I genuinely felt beautiful. I was more so worried about what other people would think of me, whether like I never walked out the house bald, but inside my own cocoon, I was always bald. And I always
Okay.
felt like, I would look in the mirror and say, what am I hiding for? When will I finally make that transition? And this summer, basically, I had that epiphany, if you will, that I'm ready to do this.
Wow. Because I think this is a better look for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's like your head is a perfect shape, your features, your bone structure, like it is like it works.
Thank you. Everyone tells me that now. Everyone's like, you have the perfect head for this. And
Yeah.
what I was worried about before I actually went to work this way, I was worried about whether I would look different.
Hmm.
And everyone told me, you look the same. Like my friends and people I've known for years, they're like, you look the same, actually. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, now I feel comfortable. I feel like I can do this. And that kind of was, honestly speaking, I never thought I would arrive to this point. I thought that I would
Mm.
wear a wig my whole life. In my 20s, I kind of found a joy in doing my hair. I thought it was like a creative outlet. I was actually pretty good at it. I would make my own wigs and just experiment with different styles. So I never actually thought about when would that day come that I would accept being bald. So I kind of transitioned into wearing a short pixie cut wig.
Hmm.
I like the style, but also I kind of was thinking about, okay, maybe one day I will be bald. So let's see how I look with short hair. And
Got it.
once I did the short hairstyle wig, I liked it. I loved it. I was like, I'm never going back to wearing long hair again. So I think that was kind of like putting my feet in the water to making that transition.
And you're talking about your fear about the response. The response seems to have been amazing. How does that
Yes.
make you feel?
I feel amazing. I'm blown away by the response, to be honest. I'm a very, like, although I'm a journalist and on camera and everything, I'm a very reserved person and I keep to myself a lot. So I didn't want a lot of attention. And that's what I told my news directors and everyone at work. I'm like, I don't know how to approach this because my biggest concern was that I don't want everyone asking me a bunch of questions or being the center of attention, like getting all the looks and stares everywhere I go. But after the story came out and just embracing all of who I am, the response has been extremely positive. Nothing but positivity, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is because so many people could resonate, not only with if you're experiencing hair loss, but just the feeling of freedom and
Hmm.
accepting your authentic self. So many people want to do that. And from what I'm hearing, everyone's describing it as brave. And I didn't feel, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was being brave. I just felt like, okay, I'm ready to be myself.
Yeah, no, this conversation is so much more than hair. Like
Yes.
this is so much. That's just kind of the entry point, but it's so much more than hair. And I'm just in awe of it because I mean, I'm a lot older than you. And so
Seriously, every time I hear you say I have like 15 years of experience as a local news. I'm like, where? She looks so young.
So it's like, if I was in Philly, you'd be my little sister. Yeah. Like, when I saw when you graduated, I was like, wow. So yeah, but for you to be there already, is amazing to me, because it's like, just being a reporter, that was something that I struggled with, like my confidence so much, and it affected my ability to report, affected live shots and stuff like that, because I cared so much more about the story, but I hated actually like being the center of attention. I was not comfortable with that. So for
Yeah.
you to do this in an industry where what you look like, especially as a woman, is so major, is monumental. Like it is you have blown open the doors. But again, when I saw it, I was just like, oh yeah, that looks right. That looks like it just looked like how it always should be. I was like, she's giving model, like, she's like, you look like you should be on a runway somewhere. Like, it was just like, oh, that feels right. It feels like this is how it should have always been.
And that was the response. I think for me, I'm a very religious person. I have a lot of faith. So I believe that God gave me this response because I needed it. Like I said, I was so worried about what other people thought of me, even though I personally felt confident. I felt beautiful. I was allowing my thoughts or my perspective of what other people would think of me to get in the way. And the first day I walked out of the house bald, I was with my boyfriend, and he was actually the person who said, okay, you need to stop wearing wigs.
Which
Just
is
do
great.
it.
That's
Yeah.
so great. That's so great.
He was like, just do it. No one cares. We're in New York. And he's like, trust me, you'll walk out bald. No one's going to look at you. No one's going to look twice at you.
Right.
There's so many other things going on right now in the city that no one cares. They're crazier people around.
A lot crazier.
And I was afraid, like shaking in my boots. Like, am I really about to go outside like this? And the first day we went to the gym in Harlem on 125th Street. So we jogged to the gym, and people literally stopped me in the street to tell me, you look great. You look beautiful. I love your haircut, or I love your hair. And I'm like, what hair? And these are people who didn't know me. They didn't know that this was my first day outside. But like I said, I think that God gave me the response and the encouragement through other people so that I could have the confidence that I really needed to step into this phase of my life.
I love that. And you didn't just share that you have alopecia. You shared so much more, that you got the diagnosis when you were 12 years old.
Yes.
First, talk to me about the diagnosis, and, you just really talking about the trauma kind of around that led to the diagnosis. Kind of talk to me about that.
So my story begins. I grew up in Washington, D.C. Both of my parents at the time had an addiction to drugs, and they struggled with that. I have 6 siblings, 5 older brothers, and a younger sister. And by the time I would say 2 years old, we were forced into the foster care system. Divided up, all of us. I spent most of the years I was in foster care, I was with my younger sister, but we were separated from my older brothers. And in one foster home, I was abused. I probably was maybe 5 years old, and I was abused physically and sexually. At the time, I didn't speak up. I didn't know how to speak up. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know.
How would you have the language? How would you even? Yeah.
And it wasn't until I believe maybe another foster child spoke up, because therapists came to my home, where I was staying with my grandmother and aunt at the time, and they asked if the same thing happened to me. And at that point, I did speak up. But over the years, between maybe age of 5 and 12, I had experienced other forms of stress and trauma, whether that's grieving the separation from my parents and my siblings. Also just other forms of abuse that I suffered in foster care. In one home, I remember being treated differently because I was dark skinned compared to my sister who's lighter complexion. And just like all of the trauma that comes with growing up in an inner city environment, away from your parents, and just wondering, how am I going to get out of this situation? So by
Right.
the time I was 12 years old, one day I woke up and had a bald spot, literally clean bald. You know, I was touching my hair as normal, and I felt it. I didn't know it was alopecia at the time, but
Right.
I went to my aunt and I told her, and she said, "Oh, it'll be fine. It'll grow back." Next thing you know, like within weeks, it got bigger, probably like this size.
Oh,
Imagine that
wow.
in the middle of your head when you had a full head of hair at one point. And as a child, especially as a Black girl, you take a lot of pride in your hair.
100%.
For me, my hair was a shield of confidence for me because I was insecure in every other area of my life. And I thought that was one thing people would compliment me about as a kid in middle school. You know, kids would always like say, "Oh, I love your hair. Your hair's so long." They want to play in your hair. And that was kind of the thing that allowed me to let my guard down and make friends with people because, you know, that's what you do when you're a little girl.
Yeah.
um, so when that happened, I struggled a lot with my confidence and I was insecure and my self-esteem was extremely low. But I think I just learned to mask it. I don't think most people knew I had low self-esteem. Most people didn't even know I had alopecia. But yeah, I would mask it with a smile, mask it with just not talking about it and finding the best way to hide it. And at that point in my life, my aunt, who was raising me at the time, she just bought me wigs and we never spoke about it. She
Oh,
never,
wow.
yeah, we never had a conversation about your hair does not define your beauty or that I'm still beautiful without my hair. It was just hide it. And I think experiencing that at 12 years old or all the way through my teenage years, that definitely shaped my identity and my character. So that shaped me into a person who felt like I had to hide.
Mm.
Um, I felt like I had to be perfect in order to succeed in life or in order to be accepted in life.
Yeah. And how did that manifest in other things?
I think, as I mentioned, it contributed to the decline of my self esteem. And I would never open up to people as friendly and vibrant and smiling as I appear. I would never truly connect with people. I had very few friends because I didn't I didn't let my guard down enough to let people in.
And
So
yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable doing a lot of things. I in college, I would never spend the night over a friend's house or stay at a friend's dorm. Um, I also was just afraid to have tough conversations. I was always afraid of someone asking me, "Is that a wig?" or asking me about my upbringing or things like that. So there were always conversations that were surface level that hindered me from really tapping into my full potential, whether that was in personal relationships, work relationships, or just, you know, in general, allowing myself to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, let's pause right there because I do want to really thank you for like sharing that because it's not easy to share, but I really do so wholeheartedly believe that your story like will set people free. Like 100% will 1,000% set people free. So thank you, for sharing that. I really appreciate that. How do you even begin? Because all of it is making sense, right? In terms of like, of course, this experience would lend itself to these feelings, would lend itself to this coping mechanism, right? Like, how do you even begin to work on that, to deconstruct it?
I think, I just think at a certain point I started to evaluate my life and evaluate, why do I feel unhappy? Why do I feel that everything is never enough? So I would say my childhood and everything that I've gone through, it's taught me to be extremely grateful, but it also always gave me a sense of never being content. And I would say in my mid 20s, I started to do the inner work to search for, why am I not happy? Um, why don't I have, I have a career that I'm happy about, and I have personal, a few personal relationships that I feel that um, I can trust them, but I didn't feel like I had a support group or a nest of people that I could depend on. And I think that is what I was missing in life. I felt like I was missing um, support, but also just like, I don't know how to describe it. I know that I thought to myself, okay, you know how people say everyone else is not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a great person. I'm loving, I'm caring. Why don't I feel connected to the world in the way that I want to, that will fulfill me? And after doing that inner work, I started to break down the layers and
Mm-hmm.
realize, okay, you aren't connecting with people because you don't know what real love is, and you don't know how to love yourself, but you also don't trust people. And why don't you trust? Because you've been let down so much. And
Mm-hmm.
why do you continue to compartmentalize relationships or not let people in? And it's because you're afraid. And why are you afraid? Because you're afraid that if people know who you really are, they'll judge you. And I was extremely afraid of judgment. Um, and once I realized that, I had to figure out, okay, how do you overcome fear? And for me, the only way for me to overcome my fears are by just doing it, throwing myself out there and facing my fear. And my biggest fear was two things: people figuring out or finding out that I come from parents who, at the time, struggled with drug addiction, and that I suffered all of this trauma and abuse, and how would they perceive me? And then, two, finding out that I was bald and how people would perceive that. Would that make people believe or conceive me as ugly, or how would people judge me? And I think that's what I was most afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, talk about confronting your fear, not even just the disclosure recently, but getting into journalism. You could have been a radio reporter, you could have been in print. Here you go on TV, right? And like such a judgmental business, subjectively judgmental. Why did you want to thrust yourself in this career when you're grappling with all of these insecurities?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a news reporter.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was a little girl, my father and my mother and father would visit my siblings and I from time to time when they could. And my father would always tell me, you're going to be a news reporter. You're going to be a journalist. My parents tell me a story about, I won an award when I was in kindergarten for writing a story or something like that. And from that point, they knew I was going to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like just manifestation, or
Mm-hmm.
just instilling words into me and saying that I was going to be a journalist all of my life. That's all I knew that I was going to be, because
Mm.
my father told me I was going to be that. And I think having that distant relationship with my parents, because we were separated,
Mhm.
that's what kept me close to them when we were separated, is thinking about those moments when they would tell me, you're a beautiful, strong, independent Black woman. You can be whatever you want to be, but you're going to be a journalist. And that's just all I knew. So throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school, I always excelled academically. I think that was an outlet for me to, I guess, find a sense of fulfillment outside of my household and outside of the
Mm-hmm.
problems that I was dealing with. For some reason, school was a safe space for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that that was my ticket to freedom. At night, I would stay up and just fantasize about what my life would be like when I grow up. I'm going to be this sophisticated woman. I'm going to be a journalist. And it's crazy to me that I'm living the exact life that I fantasized about when I was like a little girl going through hell. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I envisioned this life for myself. And I
Yeah.
think it was partially because of what my parents instilled in me, although they weren't there, but when they were there, they spoke life into me. So
That's
it never
amazing.
seemed far fetched for me to be a reporter or be on TV or on air, dealing with the things that I was dealing with, whether that's wearing a wig or not. I always knew that, okay, you have to do what's necessary to get where you want to be. And if that's wearing a wig or putting on makeup when you don't have eyebrows or eyelashes or whatnot to appear as perfect as possible to achieve your goals, I was willing to do that. And that was what my father told me as well. It's like everyone has their thing. Everyone has something that they're ashamed of or that they're insecure about. But some people have to do something a little extra to get closer to perfection. And that can be taken good or bad, if you will, because you shouldn't be chasing perfection. But that was the only language he knew to use to push me past my insecurities.
Got it. No, that's so good. And so, what has this disclosure done to your heart space now? Like, have you seen a change in yourself?
I think not yet personally. From what I'm hearing from other people, yes. Everyone's just telling me you seem so free. You seem like you have a weight lifted off of your shoulders and you're radiating. Um, and I don't think I realize it just yet, but it feels good to know that other people see that about me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I definitely feel like, I'm a very low maintenance person. So in the morning when I don't have to put on a wig and it takes me 5 minutes
Look.
to leave out the house and my only stress is what earrings am I going to wear today? That feels good. That feels amazing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hair
Also,
is a lot.
it's great to know that there are hundreds of people who've reached out to me and have been vulnerable about their stories as well, whether that's with alopecia or having a traumatic, abusive childhood. So many people have opened up and told me that my story has inspired them or freed them to the point where they want to make a change in their life or they want to take that next step to accepting who they are.
In terms of things like falling into place, I was also thinking like being in Philly and
Mm-hmm.
doing this in Philly
Yeah.
is actually wonderful. Having it be as black as it is, um, people like will love you, and will love on you regardless. Like once you're in Philly. Sometimes as an outsider, it takes a while for them to be like, where is she from? Somebody has to vouch for you, stuff like that. But once they love you, they love you. Um, and so I was just thinking of like all the places you could do this. This was like one of the best places for
I
it to
agree.
happen.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that love and support from this community. When I first got here to Philly, I kept asking God, why am I here? What work am I here to do? And for months, I just kept asking that because I felt like something was not connecting. I'm like, why am I here, God? Tell me, why am I here? Because before this, I was working in Los Angeles and I
Mhm.
loved it. I loved it. But I took a leap in my career to come to Philadelphia because I wanted to challenge myself. And I also wanted to work on the East Coast. But when I got here, it was an immediate culture shock. Even though
Mhm.
I'm from DC, I had lived on the West Coast for about 10 years. So it was an immediate culture shock. And I was just trying to figure out what's the work that is here for me? How am I going to create change in this community and be of service? And once this happened, once I revealed my story, I realized, okay, this is why I'm here, because I could not have disclosed this story or revealed myself to the world anywhere else and feel the support that I needed to get through this. And also to speak, I guess, to share a story that really resonated with this community. There are so many people in this community who are going through and have gone through what I have.
Yes.
Whether that's with like foster care or with childhood trauma or unfortunate circumstances. That is Philadelphia.
Yes.
For the viewers here. And that's why I feel like people connect with me now. Even
100%.
before, when I first got here, people have always been super welcoming in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But ever since sharing this story, I've noticed the difference and just the support.
Yes, 100%. And it's a city that values authenticity.
Yes.
Like they can smell fake from far away and they want no parts of it. And so it just is like all the things aligning. It is really just the best place for you to be. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom means accepting yourself. It means owning who you are, owning your story, and not allowing others to validate you or define your value. And when you're not so worried about, okay, how are others valuing me? What's my worth to the world? And you're more concerned about what's your worth to yourself, that feels free. You don't have, I don't have the worries or concerns or weight of having to appease to others because now I know who I am and I've owned it. And there's nothing about me that anyone can find out that I'll be ashamed of because it's all out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't weaponize it.
No.
You've taken all of it out of it, you know?
My father literally told me that as I was making the decision to come out about my alopecia. He said, the fewer secrets you have, the less, what was it? Let me think about it 1 second. He said, free your spirit of secrets and to lay all your cards on the table, because when you have nothing to hide, when you have nothing that you're ashamed of, the closer you are to perfection when you have few secrets. And not perfection in the sense of you're flawless, but perfection in the sense of people can't judge you for, hiding anything because it's all out there. And when you own who you are, people have no choice but to either respect it or they can decide how they feel about you. But their feelings about you doesn't validate or place value in who you are.
Yeah. What do you dream for yourself moving forward? I see endless opportunity. Endless. Like I feel like you don't even know. You don't even like you have like, I don't know, like placed a grenade in front of a door and you have blown it wide open.
I do think about that because I remember one day I was in my news director's office and we were talking about, okay, when is the story going to air? And she has 8 TVs on her wall, all with news on from local to national. And I look at the TV and I said, I'm going to be the only bald person on that TV, male or female.
Even better.
But I was like, am I really ready for this? Am I really ready to be the representation for so many people? And I am, because part of the reason why I did this was because I thought back to that 12-year-old girl and her feeling so ashamed and alone and ugly. And it was because I didn't see representation. I didn't see women who were bald and beautiful and accepting it. What we knew of someone who was bald was they either were sick, had cancer, or you made fun of them because, they were bald headed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see women who were strongly, boldly embracing it. It wasn't until the last few years, women like Jada Pinkett Smith or Lupita Nyong'o, or just like women in general who by choice or by circumstance are boldly embracing rocking a bald crown. Seeing them, I felt like, one, it was my responsibility to do the same thing for other women, but two, I knew within myself that, I'm beautiful, so why not? Why am I hiding it? Why
Mm-hmm.
can't I? Why not? So yeah, it's just like going back to looking at the TV screens and seeing that, okay, you're going to be the only bald woman and possibly like bald person in this market on air. What's next? What do you do with that platform? And I think it's just a matter of setting other people free.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I really think, gosh, like the industry is changing,
Mm-hmm.
so much. So when I was starting, it was very much like everybody looked the same. So, like I was 24 when I got my first on air job, and we were all like wearing blazers to look
Mm-hmm.
older, boxy, ugly blazers to look older. But if you looked, everybody had the anchor hair, the anchor bob, like I had a short haircut and I was told to grow out my hair. I was told by my news director that I had to grow out my hair because I turned 24 and I was like, I'm going to cut off my hair, and I had this short, cute cut and I loved it. But I don't think my tape wasn't like, cause I was like, did I interview that way? I think I interviewed that way, but my tape wasn't that way.
Okay.
So they're like, oh no, we like the other thing. And I'm like, and I'm thinking like, I mean, it was a whole thing, right? They patted my head, two white men in a room. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. And so, but I say all that to say that the industry and how I experienced it did not promote having any type of differentiating qualities,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you had to sound this way, you had to look this way. But really, what I know now that I'm out, and things have changed, but more so now that I'm out of the local news lane, is what you need to be is yourself, like fully yourself. That's what gives you opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And even not yourself so that other people can, learn something from, like, it's just in terms of your responsibility for yourself. Your storytelling is better. Just how you show up on camera and the connection you can have, just with the audience is different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the currency. Like that's the currency in all of television, is your way to connect. And so your ability to accept yourself fully in this space means that you no longer have a barrier to connection.
I
You know what I
agree.
mean?
Yeah.
And so you are having in your storytelling even more honest conversations and even more honest dialogue. And so it just makes your stories even more powerful.
And you have the agency to tell these stories and the agency
Yeah.
to go into these communities, and they'll have the trust that,
Yes.
one, that you can handle, and you'll be delicate with their story,
Yes.
because the communities that I'm going into in Philadelphia, everyone can't tell these stories because
No.
you have to be gentle with them. These
Yeah.
people come from circumstances that a lot of this country cannot relate to.
Yes.
And for me, breaking down that barrier and allowing myself to be vulnerable, it allows me to have credibility with these stories. And that's what I take the most pride in as a journalist, is being able to bring stories to the forefront that shed light on where I come from and who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. I think as journalists, we're taught that you have to put yourself on the back burner. But
Yeah.
when you do have layers and colors to who you are, you relate to the world, in my opinion. And as
Yes.
journalists, that's what we are. We are the voice of the people. And if you
Yes.
do not represent the people, how can you bring life and truth to their stories?
Right. And if their stories cannot be told truthfully, especially in a place like Philadelphia, accountability will not follow
Exactly.
because they'll stay in the shadows or it'll be just fluffed over. And there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of accountability that's necessary in Philadelphia. And so those stories need to be put out there because that is how change happens,
Yes. Yeah.
So you are a conduit, girl.
Thank you. Thank
You are a whole conduit. Um, so the last segment is ACT UP. So ACT, those are my initials. And what do you tell somebody who is just not very comfortable right now in their skin at all for a myriad of reasons, right? But they're just not feeling like when they step out of their front door, there's a lot that they don't want you to see that they're trying to hide. What can they do today to kind of set themselves on the path to being free?
So I think I have two things for listeners.
Okay.
One is an exercise that I did recently, and that's ask 20 people, whether they're people that are close to you, family, friends, colleagues, or people that you've known for a short period of time. Ask them, what are your greatest qualities? What are your downfalls? Or what are things that they think that you need to work on? And I think that's important because other people can see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And when I did this exercise a few months ago, the number one thing that people told me was my strength is my confidence. And I was blown away because in my mind, I don't think that I'm that confident.
Mm-hmm.
I have confidence, but I didn't think that it was so apparent. I didn't think that the way that I moved in this world shined in a way that exuded such grace. And that's how other people perceived me. And when everyone told, all of the 20 people that I asked told me, you have a confidence about yourself that I admire. I was like, what? I do? And so after that, I realized, okay, well, there is something there. There is something within me that people see that I rise above whatever um, circumstances or whatever trials and tribulations that I've faced. And these are people who didn't even know everything that I'd gone through. This is before my coming out story.
Mm-hmm.
So people saw that, you have a sense of strength and grace about you that exudes confidence, and they admired it. And then my downfall or my weakness was that people also said, which is kind of contradicting,
Mm-hmm.
that I care a lot about what other people think.
Mm.
And that's something that they believe holds me back. And I knew that as well. I was like, okay, well, what can I do about that? What can I do to change this insecurity or this sense of having to appease people? And that helped me become a better person, a better journalist, but also more in touch with who I am.
Yeah. Did a therapist tell you to do that, or did you just do that on your own?
No, a life coach, yes.
Okay.
Do that. And it was more so about figuring out my brand
Mm-hmm.
and my audience. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that helped me in so many areas of my life because
Yeah.
we often think, okay, we often think that we shouldn't ask people about, what they think of us. And that doesn't mean that you're valuing everything that they say, but these are just observations.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Right. And I just think that people can see things in you that you often don't see in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sometimes what it takes for you to step into your own.
Yeah.
I think the other thing would be finding your destiny requires you to be fearless. So ask yourself, what does it mean to be brave? What are you most afraid of? What's your biggest fear? And face it. Just do it. I always tell myself, when fear knocks, let faith answer the door. And that's really helped me just be fearless in general, because I know that I can't fail because faith has me, but also I trust my intuition. And I know that whatever decisions I'm making, they're the right decision oftentimes, or it's a decision that will, one, teach me a lesson, or two, reveal something in myself that I needed to know. So, yes, just finding your destiny requires you to be fearless, because you can't do anything afraid. You can't conquer anything afraid.
I love that. I love that. Aziza, how can we support you?
Oh, look, that's something I'm still working on. Figuring out how others can support me. I don't know. I right now.
Go ahead.
Oh, right now, I think just watching the news, watching Channel 3.
All right, let me help you.
Look, if you're
So
watch Channel 3.
when you're in Philadelphia, watch Channel 3. We will put her her social media handles in the show notes. Also, if you have an event and you need an MC or moderator or host, that she can go ahead and help you do that. She's very multi-talented. Contact her if there's an alignment with the stories, and you all can discuss how you can partner moving forward. How's that?
That's perfect. That's perfect, because I think sometimes I'm just so laid back.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, I'm very much the same way.
Yeah, I heard it on one of the episodes of your podcast. I forget which guest it was, but she said that she likes for someone else to write her bio for her.
Yes, Gloria.
Yeah, because other people will bring things out about you that you just glaze over, because it's like, whatever. I really don't think too deep about what I'm doing or what I need from others. But that was great, because I've been stepping into a passion of mine, which is, I call it transformational speaking. And that's a part of that is sharing my story and hopefully inspiring others to make transformation in their lives. So yes, any speaking engagement, I would love to do that.
Speaking engagements.
Yes.
Because it's I know the contracts are restrictive, but that is something you could definitely do. And that's also the skill that you can develop while you're in there, and also get you to network outside of news. So local organizations and national organizations, you can also fly her out. That should be fine. To do speaking engagements and impact your audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's just like, you're so easy to talk to, easy to have a conversation with. So, and I love listening to you as well. I learn so much from every conversation you have.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. That really does.